Hi, I'm Trista Engel, CEO of Paragon Legal, and welcome to GC Sidebar, a short and sharp conversation series with today's most forward-thinking general counsel. In just 4 questions, we cover the legal industry, leadership, careers, and a little fun. Today, I'm joined by Eric Greenberg, Executive Vice President, General Counsel, and Corporate Secretary at Cox Media Group, a PE-backed multi-platform media company serving over 60 million Americans in 10 major U.S. markets. Eric began his legal career at Covington & Burling and then moved to the Office of Legal Counsel at the Department of Justice. He then moved back into private practice, holding partner-level roles at Covington, Paul Hastings, and Perkins Coie. He stepped into his first general counsel role at Cox Media Group in 2021. Beyond his legal expertise, Eric is an amazing advocate for the strategic integration of legal ops within corporate legal departments. And I will personally vouch for his thoughtful commentary on the subject, including a wonderful webinar he did with Paragon and his head of legal ops last year. Eric, welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Let's jump in.
Okay.
What is the biggest challenge facing GCs and in-house legal teams today?
I think the biggest challenge for in-house teams and for general counsel in particular is also the biggest opportunity, and that's the increasingly strategic nature of the GC role. I think we are moving increasingly away from a model where somebody calls the legal department when they think there's a legal issue, and much more into a world in which the GC and legal, by extension, is at the table mapping strategy. With that has come a tremendous opportunity for the GC to use what I think is a really unique and inherent skill of a lawyer to discern issues, to not have an affiliation with any particular function, to be able to orchestrate across disciplines. And I think the GC is increasingly being tasked with or being given the latitude to use that broad skill set in a way to help map strategy end to end. And I think that's a huge challenge. It's a huge change in the nature of the job. I think it's also an incredible opportunity and frankly, the part of the job I find most exciting.
Yeah, that is fascinating. And it really is making the GC and the legal function more a part of the business as opposed to
Absolutely.
advising on the business or something separate from
That's
the
right.
business. What accomplishment are you most proud of in your current role?
I think the thing I'm most proud of in my current role is integrating a very cross-disciplinary strategy that had a huge impact on our ability to negotiate markedly superior terms in some material contracts for our company. And we took a strategy that developed from what I've come to think of as legal R&D, where you're using legal really as a laboratory to do research and development on, do we have legal claims? Do we have legal arguments? Are there policy issues that we might be able to use? Are there government affairs or even kind of public affairs communication strategies that we can be using to shape the context? If we just play the game that the bigger party has created, that sort of we exist in their world as they define it, the best we will do is getting a slightly less bad deal. But in the last year on a number of material contracts, we really created a very composite strategy that was across disciplines. And we're able to marshal that in a way that redefined the way the deal was being negotiated and led to a much better outcome. In a world where the GC often has to point to the dog that didn't bark as kind of our success, please imagine all the bad things that didn't happen. This was one where look at these numbers, do that math, that was us.
I love that. That sounds both completely intellectually stimulating, fun, obviously successful. And you mentioned several examples in there of ways that you sort of broke the status quo and did things differently and got to wonderful outcomes. And that is so valuable to create that moment of change. What's one career moment that changed your trajectory?
In an effort to find some job satisfaction, to find some job success, I started to talk to people that did corporate transactional work. That created this sort of bizarre, if also serendipitous combination that I had a lot of experience. I, had more presence than a new associate might, but I had the legal background of a brand new associate. I didn't know anything about corporate law, corporate transactional work. And I was brought into a negotiation by a partner, and I was given the draft of the ship mortgage that the other side had drafted. And this was long enough ago that the partner said, go to the library, go to the forms volumes, then you look up ship mortgage. And basically he said, whatever's in those forms that's not in this document, edit it. I marked up this ship mortgage, took very literally what he had said. And so he then, kind of as a very nice professional development gesture, took me with him to the negotiation. On the other side was a very senior partner, classic gray-haired guy, a junior partner, and one or two associates. And on our side, it was that partner and me. And some issue came up. The senior partner and my partner stepped away to resolve this issue. And so the rest of us were just left sitting there. To use the time, the junior partner on the other side said to me, would you like to go over your markup of the ship mortgage? And I said, okay, but I didn't really understand what that, I just thought, well, I made these good changes. I didn't understand it was like a negotiation. And so he takes out my ship mortgage and he's going through them. And certainly they were mostly not controversial. But he gets to one change I had made and he said, I don't know if we can agree to this language. And so I looked at it. I had no idea what it meant. I copied it literally by pencil. I copied it out of a book. That's what it said. He told me, if it's in the book, put it in the doc. I did not know what it meant. And now he's telling me he can't agree to it. This is the first negotiation I've ever been in. And there's a long pause. And finally I look up and I said to him, deadpan, I said, all I can tell you is that language has appeared in every ship mortgage I've ever seen. And I stopped because I literally didn't have anything else to say. And the silence hung in the air. And he looked at the language again and said, okay. And so the partner came back, the negotiation resumed, and we then leave, and the partner says, did anything happen while I was out of the room? And I said, well, yeah, we went over the ship mortgage. And I think the color drained from his face, like, what happened? And I said, oh, he was fine with all of it except for this one language. He said he wouldn't accept it. And he said, well, what did you say? And I said, all I can tell you is it's been in every ship mortgage I've ever seen. And it was one of those, like, what's your deal? And it was this moment of discovery of, like, you don't know what you're doing, but there's something about you that has a lot of potential, and I see it. I suddenly went from being a very middling litigator on the B team to being like a star transactional associate in the corporate group. And my trajectory, it literally changed at that moment. And I was well on my way to becoming a partner, not immediately. And it was a long road with all the classic ups and downs, but that was the watershed moment when it turned.
That is a fabulous story. You are also a great storyteller.
Well, thank you. I also just want to make clear, I still don't know anything about ship mortgages. So that was the high watermark, if you will, of my maritime law career.
You know all you've ever needed to know.
I do. One thing that I learned from that is the power of silence, because what I said was certainly clever. It was certainly true, but really the power of it was that I stopped. And I frankly only had the discipline to stop because I had nothing else to say. And there are people, and I'm a good model of such a person, where your nervousness leads you to fill the empty space. And the power of not doing that and sort of putting the onus on the other person is an incredibly powerful negotiating tactic.
Eric, if you were not an attorney, what would you be?
So I'm laughing because I'm going to tell you that this has been my answer since fifth grade, because we were tasked with writing our autobiographies in fifth grade. So I was 12. And the last chapter was like, what's the future? And I said that my dream was to be the host of the Today Show. And I've always loved the news and politics and current affairs, but I also love movies and theater. And so the idea of like having a talk show where you kind of talk about all of those things has always been like really, really appealing to me. And my wife, this is now going back a ways, but we were at like a brunch, and she overheard me say to someone that my dream was to be the host of Weekend Today. And when we went home, she said, "What was that about? I thought your dream was to be the host of the Today Show. Why did you say Weekend Today?" And I said, "Well, I'm trying to be more realistic."
Well, I could see you being excellent at that career.
I thought when Hoda retired, there was an opening, but here I am, still lawyering away.
We'll keep an eye out on
Thank you.
those openings.
Yeah, you might be able to help me, like if they need a fractional host.
Right, yes.
Paragon may be exactly how I get my foot in the door. Thank you.
That's our next service line.
Thank you.
All right, and the bonus question, who is your favorite fictional lawyer?
Mine is a character named Henry Drummond, who is a lawyer in the play and the movie Inherit the Wind, which is a fictional account of the Scopes Monkey trial. And Spencer Tracy plays that character in the movie, and he's based on Clarence Darrow. And in the real Scopes Monkey trial, Clarence Darrow, who was then, and perhaps always will be, one of the greatest trial lawyers in American history, was opposite William Jennings Bryan, who is one of the great political orators of the progressive era. But in that case, notwithstanding William Jennings Bryan's progressive background, he was defending the school system in firing this teacher for teaching evolution. Clarence Darrow defended the teacher. And the brilliance and the drama of it, it's one of my favorite films. And I will tell you, I only know about it because when I was in high school drama, I don't even remember the character I played, but my little thing was that I paced a lot. And the drama teacher who was directing the play said, "Eric, you got to stop pacing. But I promise you, if we ever do Inherit the Wind, you can play Henry Drummond and you can pace back and forth." And I was like, what is that? I thought Inherit the Wind was like this fabulous, fascinating name. And so I sort of looked into it and fell in love with that character and, of course, the story.
Well, this has been really fun, Eric. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for sharing all this color and all of your interesting stories along your journey.
Thank you for having me.
All right, that's a wrap on today's episode of GC Sidebar. Catch more great conversations on our website at paragonlegal.com. Thanks for tuning in.